Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Well, I'm back from my fun-filled infusion at the hospital, and I just want to take a moment before we talk about other stuff to thank you all very, very much for the kind words you sent to me in your comments on the video I did from the hospital. I mean, the reason I did that video, as I'm sure many of you know, is because I really wanted to find a way to kill the time I had to sit while I was in the chair. And I've got to confess, talking to you folks is as therapeutic for me as anything that they were injecting into me at the time. And, there is so much crap going on out there. And when I started doing these talks, it was the beginning of the pandemic, and I wanted to find a way to talk about music and sort of change the subject. And of course, none of this crap is going away anytime soon. And I just have become quite fixated on doing these things and enjoy it tremendously. And I want to thank all of you who are watching, all of you who subscribed. There's a subscribe button down here or over on one of these corners. Please push it. If you haven't, subscribe. It's helpful. But I really appreciate it tremendously. The reception has been wonderful. And, the wonderful thing about this is that all the awful people and the crazies I can delete, which is wonderful. I mean, we're all control freaks, and that gives me such a fabulous feeling of power to be able to just get rid of the obnoxious comments that will inevitably come this way. And try and create a community of really serious, kind-hearted music lovers where I can be the only nasty bastard in the room. And it's just tremendous fun. And you're giving me that opportunity. And I am beyond grateful to all of you. I really, really am. So thank you. Thank you from my heart. I was tremendously touched and moved by your response. But not surprised, actually, because I know what kind of folks you are. And it's a joy, really a joy and a privilege for me to be able to talk to you. And now we are going to talk about Schubert's Quintet in C major, what's the D number? It's like 959 or something. No, 936 or 956 or, 956. That's what it is. I never remember these number things. I am terrible with that stuff. But it's the Quintet in C major for two cellos. That is, Schubert was building on the Boccherini model of quintets with two cellos and not the Mozart model of quintets with two violas. Now this talk may surprise you a little bit because, I was hanging out in the overflow room and here in the Brooklyn Essentials department, if you want to call it that. And, I have a stack of, 2 or 3 dozen recordings of the quintet. But let's talk tachlis here, as we say in Yiddish. Let's get down to the brass tacks, How many of these suckers can you really listen to? I mean, really, how many do you really remember? I'm asking myself, how many do I remember of all these performances I've heard over the years and have kept because I like them? I mean, I really, really like them. But when you wind up with so many recordings of a piece like that, what is the point of me giving a 40-minute, 30-minute, maybe 30 minutes anyway, because I never stop talking, but a 30-minute talk where we're really splitting hairs? Because the fact of the matter is that the standard of performance in this particular work is so high. There are so many really, really fine versions. It's impossible. It's impossible to whittle them down. And even if I just go through the stack, I know it's fun for you guys, especially if I pull out one that you have and that you like. And, and I enjoy doing that. But I just think that you get to a point where it's almost impossible to say something meaningful about the piece. So in this particular case, I usually put in the repertoire the best versions of whatever, because of course I'm right, But really, Peepo, what's the matter? What's the matter, sweetie? Hold on a minute. We're having a cat crisis. Peepo, come here. What's going on? Yeah, I fed her. She should be happy. I don't know. She's doing her morning hunt for the little mouse toy thing that we've scattered around here. Anyway, back to Schubert. I just want to be able to not say these are the best. These are my personal choices, and they're all my personal choices anyway. That whole thing is just sort of a joke. So, but in this case, I've chosen half a dozen, just half a dozen that are my personal choices for the best versions, the ones that I actually listen to when I want to hear the Schubert Quintet, not the ones that I've kept in the permanent collection because I think they're really good, but I'll probably never get to them again as long as I live. I mean, there are only so many hours in the day. You all know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. I understand, but I just want to explain this. And I want to explain this to people who may not know the work or who are not yet at the point where their classical music collection is taking over their homes, or who are doing, digital download things where it's all out there and you can choose from a billion different versions and you don't have any physical product at all. Which is something I've never gotten into yet because I'm too old, but I'll get there eventually, maybe before I die, who knows? I just want to talk about my personal favorites, and you can tell me what yours are, and we'll just move on from there. I think that's the way we have to do it with works like this. And also, we need to talk about the piece. It was one of Schubert's last works. He was ill. He was dying. He was, I was in the hospital yesterday, and you look at someone like Schubert, who was 31 when he died and was sick with syphilis his whole life, and who wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and turned out stuff like this. I mean, who the hell am I? It's people like that who really occasion wonder. The Mozarts of the world, the Schuberts of the world, the people who just have this impulse that they can't resist to compose masterwork after masterwork. It's like terrifying. It really is. And so here are my six versions of this magnificent work. And there are basically two ways to go about it. I mean, there are two issues that I consider in thinking about performances of the work. One of the issues is repeats. Now, because it's a long piece, you do it with all the repeats. It can run around between 50 and 55 minutes. That's long. That is a big symphonic piece of music. Without the repeats, you can chop about 8 or 9 minutes off of that, maybe a little more. I don't know. You can make it shorter. Let's put it that way. Generally speaking, I think if you're going for the big thing, you might as well do the repeats because you're committed. The difference between 47 minutes and 52 minutes or whatever, what's the point? You might as well play the repeats. And the music is so beautiful that it's worth hearing more than once, I think, don't you? But, it's not the biggest deal, but it's something that I definitely take into consideration when I choose a recording that I want to hear. It doesn't affect my evaluation of what the best performances are. It's just a personal preference. But the biggest issue is the slow movement. Now, the slow movement, oh my God, talk about a cosmic, transcendental piece of music. The principal subject of the slow movement is, as those of you who know the work will know, it's nothing but a bunch of static string chords with pizzicatos and the cellos underneath, and a fragment of a tune on the principal violin and sort of a march rhythm, but it sort of goes on like that. I mean, it's not a theme. It's a texture. It's a textural object, and that slow movement can be played. Now there's the turbulent middle section and all that stuff. There's more to it than that, but that principal theme is a bear to do correctly because it requires. I mean, there are two ways to do it. You can take what I call the utter stasis approach, meaning, as still as you can possibly play it, and with this sort of hypnotic trance-like quality, or you can try and create a melody out of these long sustained notes and the slightly more quickly moving upper parts and the textures, and I tend to prefer. I appreciate both, but I tend to prefer the performances that try to make the whole thing sing, because Schubert was first and foremost a singer, as we all know. I mean, a song guy. And even here, where he's creating an almost bassy, inhuman, spiritual thing, the music still needs to sing, in my view. Now, that works out in terms of timings, right? I mean, this is how it's expressed. Music is time and motion, or not motion in this case. Usually, the performances I prefer will run around 13, 14 minutes in that movement. The ones that are more stasis-oriented tend to go over 15, 16 minutes in that movement. Again, it's a function of the whole work, the entire conception, and the quality of the playing. And there is one thing that this movement proves beyond a doubt, which is all of these period instrument people who talk about you can't use vibrato, it's only an ornament, are full of crap. And this slow movement proves it. First of all, because every single treatise says that where you must use vibrato is on sustained notes and slow tempos, which means this entire movement is going to have continuous vibrato. That doesn't mean it has to be excessive. It doesn't mean it has to be sappy. It doesn't mean that you can't vary the color. You should do all those things, but it has to be there because those slow string chords have to shimmer. They have to have warmth. This is not the expression of nihilistic misery. Not at all. and so, yeah, there has to be that human singing quality at all times. That's why I think I prefer the slightly faster performances. And also, if you take a quicker tempo, you can use less vibrato. Because the slower it goes, the more you need it to sustain the tone all the way through. So, there are a lot of considerations here. But let's talk about the performances now. The 6. Now, the reference recording for me, I'm going to start with that one because it's not the one I play most often, but it's an extraordinary performance, is the Alban Berg Quartet with Heinrich Schiff as the extra cello. And that's here in the Alban Berg Quartet box. Now, it was available separately in EMI's Great Performances series forever. I would get the single disc. I would not get this in order to have that version of the the quintet. But, one of the things that's funny about these things, you will agree with me, you folks out there who collect these things, is, you get the box because you think, oh gosh, it's going to save space. It's going to be much easier for me than having all of these separate discs all over the place and having to find them. So you get the box. Here's the box. And then you put it away and you never take it out again, ever. And when you want to listen to Schubert's quintet, you're not going to go looking for the box. You want to go to the S section and pull it out. I have it in the S section in the overflow room. And I thought, it's easier. Here I am. There's less space. I'll get the box. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. It's better to have it separate. It really is. And that is an extraordinary performance, nowhere more so than in the scherzo, which has the most wonderful bite and tang. It's hunting music, that scherzo, right? Ba ba da 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 dum ba ba. It's just wonderful. And I just feel that that performance is great for the quick music. It's very, very beautiful. It's amazingly played. It's very well recorded. It has no repeats. It is very abstemious in repeats. Even the first repeat in the scherzo, which is only 30 seconds long, they don't take. And I like those repeats. I particularly like them in the scherzo because I just love that music. So that is the one thing that annoys me about that performance. But it is, in all other ways, extraordinary. But now I'm going to talk about the other 5 that I really have enjoyed. The first one, and this is the oldest of all of them, is the Hollywood String Quartet with an extra cello. Who's the extra cello here? Do they tell me who the extra? Yes, Kurt Rayer is the extra cello. The Hollywood String Quartet was, of course, an astonishingly fabulous group with an amazing range of repertoire. And it may be because they were in Hollywood and they were all playing in movie orchestras to make a living most of the time, that they took their classical chamber music really seriously. They were amazing players in terms of accuracy, precision, and emotional depth too. And this is a performance that does the 13-minute slow movement, which I love. It also does not take repeats because back in the 50s when they did this in glorious mono sound, what was the date for this? 51. You did not take repeats. But I think it's safe to say that in 1951, This performance by the Hollywood String Quartet set a new standard for the work, and it has not dated. It hasn't dated a second. It's fantastic. So that is my first choice in my personal selection. The other, much more recent, much more recent. Yeah, oh, I can get out of the box here. The Takács Quartet. And this is with Ralph Kirschbaum, cello. They're, of course, a wonderful group. They've been making beautiful, beautiful recordings. This is on Hyperion, and it's exceptional in every way. They take about 14 minutes over the slow movement, which works. It's just exactly midway between the more songful and the more static approaches. It works beautifully, and it's a glorious, glorious performance. And you also get the quartet and sots as a coupling. It's a long disc. It's 65 minutes of music or thereabouts. So that is a marvelous performance and easy to source. One of the things that's also bothering me is, especially when you talk about stuff on major labels, is that the catalog is just such a god-awful mess right now. I think it's a lot easier actually now if you do digital downloads, because I'm looking on Spotify and things like that, and a lot of this stuff is available much more easily than it is to get physical product. And I know a lot of you already prefer that than getting digital product. It's a heck of a lot less expensive, first of all, and it's space saving. And I'm beginning to understand that. It's beginning to impinge upon me, and that's thanks to you guys. So that's one. Another one, and this is a real sleeper. This is with no quintet anyone's ever heard of, because it's not. It's a bunch of students at Marlboro. This is a great version of the quintet. There's something to be said for a fabulous group of crack musicians all together in a workshop environment making music together. And this has that feel. It has that feel of freshness, of discovery, and risk-taking, because this is the static slow movement par excellence version. It's 16 and a half minutes long. But it works. It really works. The performers are Pamela Frank, Felix Gallimere. These people are not slouches, right? It's their teachers and their students. The Gallimere Quartet was marvelous. He was an incredible teacher. Pamela Frank was Claude Frank, the great pianist's daughter. They did the Beethoven piano sonatas together, and Claude Frank was the Schnabel student. They're oozing pedigree, in Marlboro. And let's see, Stephen Tenenbaum is the violist, Peter Wiley, a great cellist, and Julia Lichten, who I went to high school with, a splendid cellist. So she was Julie Lichten in those days. She's Julia now. This is a great recording of the quintet. Just a bunch of talented, music-loving people making fabulous music together. And you get the Shepherd on the Rock, Der Hirt auf dem Felsen, with Benita Valente, Harold Wright, and Rudolf Serkin on the piano. It does not get better than that. If you can find this Schubert disc from Marlboro, it's pretty special. It really, really is. I love this recording, even though it has that really, really slow movement. They pull it off. And, success is in the hearing. If it works, it works. Next, here's two on what you might call intrepid independent labels. Well, Hyperion, of course, is one of those too. But Hyperion has amassed such a fabulous and large catalog. They're a major label as far as I'm concerned, and probably for you too. An extraordinary label. And I have permission to play samples from them too, by the way. But I'm not going to do it for this. I'm going to do it for another one, and you'll see what I mean. This is the string quintet played by the Pedersen Quartet, with Michael Sanderling as the extra cello on Capriccio. Now, the Pedersen Quartet is an extraordinary group. If you've heard them do the Schulhoff quartets, and they've done all kinds of cool stuff on Capriccio, they're really worth hearing. Some of their stuff tends to come and go in the catalog, but this is a marvelous performance of the Schubert Quintet. I pull it out regularly, and I listen and enjoy it tremendously. This has, let's just look here, this has also one of the stasis versions, 15 minutes and 49 seconds in the slow movement. And this is one of those cases, people always say, well, timing isn't everything. It is here. It's not indicative of of whether the performance will be successful or not, but it is indicative of the interpretive approach. And you really get a sense there's a big difference between the two. There really is. And now, however, my personal favorite, the one I pull out when I really want to hear the Schubert Quintet most often is this one on Channel Classics. This is the Orpheus Quartet. Yes, the Orpheus Quartet with Peter Vispilve, the extra cello. I think this is just a knockout of a performance. And like most Channel Classics productions, it is gloriously recorded. Jared Sachs, who runs Channel Classics, takes infinite pains over the sonics in his productions. And I think this was just a magnificent, magnificent performance that nobody seems to talk about because there are just too many. There's just too many performances of this work out there, right? And this is the songful version of the Adagio par excellence in my version. I'm going to play you the first minute or so just so you can hear it. I have permission to do this, and I'm going to play it for you. It is glorious, absolutely wonderful and heartfelt, and you can hear, I think, exactly what I'm talking about the songfulness that's present even in this extraordinarily slow, static, spiritual music. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Listen to this. You see what I mean? See how marvelous that is? And it doesn't detract anywhere from I think the music's hypnotic qualities, but it gives it just a warmth and a soulfulness. And that's what this performance has. And again, the Orpheus Quartet with Peter Vispilve on Channel Classics, that is my go-to Schubert Quintet in C. So with all of that, I ask you to continue to keep on listening. I want to thank you again for all of your kind comments from my video made in the hospital. There may be one of those coming twice a year because that's every 6 months. I've got to go do that, and God knows where else I'll be and doing these videos from, because this has become a compulsion for me. And I know watching them has become a compulsion for you, and we're all on the same wavelength, folks. I can assure you of that. So keep on listening. Thank you for watching. I appreciate everything that you say and all of the time that you spend with me. It's a pleasure and an honor and a joy. And let's just keep it going. Thank you. Bye-bye.